Well, hello there, and thank you so much for joining us on Best of Both Worlds. Stay tuned because Karen Farnsworth is here to show us some wonderful applications. Well, today we have a special treat. We have Karen Farnsworth here again, and she's going to show us a wonderful technique. And then we on CS7, which is CreativeStudio 7. And we're learning all that we can on that. And then we're going to really do some playing. So let's get started. What are you showing us today, Karen?
First, we're going to work with apply. So we're going to use CreativeStudio 7 to put apply pattern on this quilt.
Apply pattern. Okay, I'm ready. Are you? Let's go.
So I have this narrow sashing. It's actually an outside border, but I have these kind of narrow sashings all the time as stop borders in quilts too, and they can be tricky to fit a pattern into. So I really love to use apply on these patterns. And the first thing I need to do is draw a line as a base pattern. So I am going to bring my machine all the way down. You can see I've already stitched the bottom half of this quilt. So I'm going to put my machine right on that end point of that stitched repeat. Go into draw a line icon. So now I'm in draw a line, and you can draw a line on the CAD screen or you can use your machine to draw it on the quilt. So that's what I'm going to do here. My laser light came on, so I can choose that point very accurately. Click my start point, and then I'm going to move up this sashing, staying right in the middle. I'm giving myself a little bit of an allowance, seam allowance, because this is the outside of the quilt. And come all the way to the end to make my last point. Close that draw line, and that becomes the base line, the base pattern on screen for me to apply to. Okay, here is the line that I just drew on the quilt showing on the CAD screen. I'm going to select that because it becomes my base pattern that I will apply patterns to. And the pattern I'm going to use today is this very simple apply continuous curve. So I'm over here in my pattern manager, and I'm going to select this pattern and go into its properties, right click and view properties, so that I can change the size if I need to. This tells me that this pattern is 1/4 of an inch high, and I don't want it 1/4 of an inch high. I want it to be closer to 1 inch because that's the size of my little narrow border. Let me close this, close the properties, and I'm going to double click on this pattern to put a copy in my project. So now I'm going to move from my patterns tab to my project tab, find that pattern, right click, go to properties, and change the height of that design to about 0.75. I want to give myself a little bit of a margin on either side, so 0.75 is exactly what I want it to be. Save and close. Now I have the pattern, the base pattern is selected on screen, and the apply pattern, which is basically a point-to-point pattern, is selected in my project tab. Then all I have to do is use the apply icon on the top of the screen, and CS does the rest of the work. It places repeats to fill that space. It follows that line that I drew. And you can see that that original line that I drew on the quilt is still selected or highlighted so that I can delete it, because it is not a stitching line, it's just a reference line. So I can use delete on my keyboard and get rid of that. And then I'm ready to quilt. Now we're ready to quilt. Start quilting icon. It goes right to that start point or the end point of the last repeat that I stitched on the bottom half of the quilt. Pull up my threads, go. Now you can see that this design is stitching up this left border. That's because we follow that border rule, which is that borders always stitch in a clockwise direction. That's in case the design is directional. So feathers, you wouldn't want them coming together on a top border. You want them to stitch all in one direction. So that's why I drew my line from the bottom to the top. And that's how quick and easy it is to put a simple pattern in a narrow sashing.
That is so good. I love that. Well, I thought since you were here, Karen, we would just have fun.
Okay.
And you know, we do have some new feet with the Gammill, for the Gammill machines, and a kit that you can put them on with, and that's very cool. And I have bins and bins of stuff because I used to do it. And I want to show you how I used to do it. And then we're going to have Karen put the foot on, the new couching foot, and then we'll show you freehand and with the Statler, so you can see what that's like. So that's what we're going to do.
We're just going to have fun. Play.
Yes. I just loved all of these threads. You can see, I mean, they're just amazing. And they're so soft, most of them. They're not like the yarn, but they're really cool. And so if I wanted them on a quilt, I just put them down and I just zigzag them wherever I wanted them, like this. And so that's how I used to do it. And I've been doing that since 1998, I believe. And I could do that like down between borders or whatever. It's very fun. So you can do that with the thicker ones that won't fit through the hole on your couching foot. Isn't that cool? You like that?
That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
I love the colors.
I know,
and the
right?
textures and the dimension.
Everything, everything. So now we're going to put on the new couching foot so you can see how much easier it is to do, and faster, of course, than that way. But still, if you have really thick thread or something unusual, you can still put it on your quilt. It's just fine. So that's how I used to do it, and I still do that if I have a thicker thread or a thicker, you know, something I really want on the quilt, but it's not even going to fit through the foot. So you can do it.
Yeah, use all those fun textures that, like you said, won't work with the foot.
Yes. So you're going to show us how to change that foot now to the couching foot, and then we'll see how we do it with the Statler and freehand.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the new quick change feet are really quite simple to change. I literally just loosen the nut there and pull a foot off. There goes our traditional foot.
Should you take the needle out, Karen, or does it matter?
It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Isn't that nice? You don't really have to take it out.
Yeah, because I hate putting that in.
I know. You don't have to rethread your machine.
Cool.
So there's our couching foot. And I'm just going to stick that one on there and screw it in.
Oh, easy peasy.
So easy.
And there are other feet. The trapunto foot, the spoon foot, and in other episodes we'll show what those are for.
And if you're not sure if you've gotten it quite tight enough, you don't want to over tighten it, but you might just take a little wrench and just tighten it just a touch. But you don't want to over tighten it. And there it is, it's on there really securely. And now we're going to play with a variety of different yarns and just see what works with it.
Awesome.
Okay, sometimes the trick to couching is getting your yarn or your specialty thread through that little hole in the couching foot. So this is the way I do it. I just wrap a heavyweight thread, this is jean stitch, wrap that over my yarn, so I've basically doubled it and then doubled my yarn. I have to find my ends. I don't need too much. I find my ends of my jean stitch and thread, not the needle, but the foot. So there we have that there, and as long as I hold on to this doubled up yarn, when I pull it through, it should come just fine.
That's cool. And I might also mention that if you have something that practically fills the hole, the hole in the couching foot,
right,
that I have been known to unscrew the foot, thread it through, and then put the foot back on.
Right, because these feet are so easy to get off.
Yeah.
You can pull it out, and then it's just easier to manipulate, easier to handle.
So, good.
So there we go. Now we're going to put it back over here on our fabric, choose a pattern, and see how this particular yarn stitches our Statler pattern. I'm going to put the machine in the center of my space, and the pattern I've chosen is a template for, or a pattern for just a table topper, about 10 inches square, has a star in the center, and then it has a little bit of an echo. So we're just going to put that on the screen and stitch it away. So I'm going to go to Start Quilt, pull up that bobbin thread, and make sure I have plenty of slack here on this yarn, and let's go. So it's stitching my star. This design is, like I said, it's a star with a little bit of an echo, and it seems to be doing pretty well with this yarn. It's pretty standard yarn. Variegated, of course, so we've got that color going on in there, which of course we always love.
Yes. I think if you kind of hold it in the direction it's going.
Yep, if I had fed it in a little bit better there.
Then it will make sure that it stitches every bit of it. Because I find that when I'm doing the freehand, I just need to keep the yarn ahead of me.
So if I turn that yarn to feed it towards the direction, there we go. We didn't have any trouble down here with this corner.
Yeah, just kind of play with it. Here, I'll feed your yarn. How's that?
We'll have a feeder for the feeder.
Yes. Oh,
I do love those colors.
Yes, I do.
And no thread breaks, no trouble that way. It's just going pretty well.
Just needs to have it ahead of it so that it stitches on it. Because if it's behind, it's going to miss it.
Just about got myself in trouble there, throwing it
Yeah,
around.
I saw that. I didn't miss a thing there.
Yep, I love these colors on black. I don't think people use black enough in quilts.
Oh, I do.
Yes, I know you use black. But there are many people that shy away from it.
Yeah, they do. But there are a lot of colors in the rainbow, so.
There are, and there's no right or wrong.
Nope.
This is even going to stitch kind of a frame so that when it's finished quilting, when it's finished stitching here, if I want, I can just take pinking shears or something, trim the edges, and I'm finished. But of course, I can also do a traditional binding or something and have a really nice, just kind of a fun little wall hanging or table topper.
And this yarn, I'm just reading the stuff, and it's all washable, and the colors are fast, you know, so that they're not going to come out. So you could do that on anything, even if you washed it a ton times.
Yeah, and if you have trouble where I did here, you can see that I wasn't feeding the yarn quite well right here in this area. If you wanted to stitch a placement pattern, so go ahead and let the machine stitch in its regular thread so that you can follow that when it's stitching the yarn down.
There's an excellent idea, and I bet you just thought of that.
Oh, no, I do that all the time.
Oh, you do it all the time?
Not with couching, but with my applique.
Oh, with your applique.
Because if I had thought of it before, I would have made sure that was perfect.
But that's okay, because that might happen, and now it won't happen to anybody because they're ahead of it.
My mistake is someone else's gain.
Well, I love it. I love it. Let's see some fun stuff with just some freehand. Let's see if we can do that. This is just a really fun, it's not a yarn, but it's a cute little trim. And you can just go any direction on this, but you can see what it's going to do. I can make points. I can come out. Isn't that fun?
That's nice. And I guess because there's a little more bulk to it, it doesn't have any trouble catching that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And we did the same thing. We used the jean stitch. You just have to go back and fluff it up again.
I love it.
And you can go a little faster. You just got to keep the yarn, you know, make sure you have enough. You don't want to have to thread it twice. And let's try one more kind of, here we go, we're going to run out of that one, so let's change that. Here's another one. And you see it got ahead of me here. It's catching the edges.
Yeah, the tails.
So yeah, I'm going to have to really stay on top of this one in the direction that I'm going. Because it is actually a very thin one. And I think that's the deal, is when you get down and you get this thin, even though it looks shaggy, you will have to keep ahead of it to make sure it stitches. Yeah, because it pulls away. So I think the whole point, Karen, is that you have to really play with this stuff and see what works. Right? Oh yeah, it is a good thing. It's fun. Then you can bring this stuff up like this. But I think you really have to play and see what works really well. So if I wanted to use this, then all I have to do is slightly zigzag as I go to make sure that I am catching the main stem, which is very tiny actually. It's very tiny and goes through the hole very easily, but by going back and forth over it, I've really caught it very securely. So see, I've learned something already. I can use all my threads, Karen. Well, I can do this all day, but I do quilt all day actually, and so do you. So that is really fun. I'm so excited that we have this new thing to experiment with and have fun with. Karen suggested we put on the trapunto foot to see if some of these bigger yarns and funner stuff would work.
Because the hole is just a little bit larger.
It's just a little bit larger than the couching foot, and it's working great. Look at it. It's just, I ran out of thread. I mean, I've just been having a lot of fun doing it. But that's the trapunto foot, and it does work with these bigger yarns. I think it doesn't mash them down as much. What do you think? Because the other one we really had to fluff.
Yeah, I think it looks really neat.
Oh, it's awesome.
So maybe the moral is to experiment, try different things.
So now we want to do this on everything.
Yes.
Okay, let's
look at that texture.
Okay, so be sure to watch our next episode of Best of Both Worlds. See you next time.